You're listening to Airey Bros Radio. Be there or be square, because it's all killer, no filler.
Hey, this is Matt Seidel.
Hey, this is Brian Keeneland.
This is David Weiss.
This is Jeff Meldrum. Hey everyone, this is James Fitzgerald.
This is Rob Earth.
Hey guys, this is Ian McCall, Uncle Creepy.
So this is Martin Rooney.
This is Roger Steffen.
This is Del Bigtree.
This is Monica Perez.
This is Troy Steiner.
This is Miles Moran.
Hey guys, I'm Adrian Bosman.
This is Charles Nick with Third Wave Water.
It's Brent Tobler, and you are listening to Airey Bros Radio.
Yeah, my favorite conspiracy theory is that people think the conspiracy theories aren't real.
Our family was like the Waltons on acid.
We're your guys, and we'd be happy to be your shamans.
These people who think it's Taylor Ham, I think they got some screws loose.
I forget who said it. I'd love to give them credit. I think it was the Airey Bros who said, like, when we all do better, we all do better.
I vetted you, and you guys seem like a good couple fellows, so it'd be fun to hang out with you virtually for a bit, chat with you.
Oh, man, you guys look cool, man. I'm with a couple of cool cats over here.
Am I correct? Were you actually camping? Did you actually pitch your tent on Hope Pass? Did I hear that? No, okay.
No,
that's one of those urban legends.
And sucking that thing.
Oh, it's great.
No.
This is already my favorite podcast.
Dude, the minute you step in Iowa, they're throwing you on your back. The shitty wrestlers go out for basketball in my state.
The Airey Bros podcast. A couple dudes, built pretty good, look good. They're based out of Colorado.
You know.
People freak out. Wait, you have steak for breakfast? Yeah, I'm having steak for breakfast. Now I'm gonna poop one time that whole day, and it's gonna be like a one-wipe wonder. And it talks about the mushrooms. All right, we keep the heifers, we keep the cows for milk. You're growing grass, like that's what you're farming. You're farming grass, and you're turning that into food. Like if you're fat, one meal a day is freaking awesome. A limited availability of grass, right? It takes a long time to grow an animal fat enough. In fact, raw honey, a lot of like type 1 diabetics will use it to make blood glucose corrections because it doesn't require significant amounts or usually any insulin. And I smelled that bugger, and he came up behind me and he screamed as loud as he could, and it smelled like death, and he had red eyes. And my mama told me, just keep running, I make sure to turn off the Wi-Fi when I go to bed, and if I wake up in the morning and I left it on, I'm like, blew it, I feel like I don't know, shaving days off my life, maybe the longer I leave the Wi-Fi on. I mean, there have been so many studies that show, even just with normal cell phone use, massive increase of glucose uptake in the brain. Yeah, that's serious. This is Tristan Haggard, and you're listening to Airey Bros Radio.
Are you still currently American citizens, or are you guys Ecuadorian? Do you have dual citizenship or anything like that?
We've got residency in Ecuador. We're still American citizens. If you give up the U.S. passport is a pretty convenient thing. U.S. taxes are not very convenient things. So yeah, as expats, we still get to pay. We still get to pay taxes to Pfizer and Moderna.
Jeez.
Crazy, right? Well, and you don't get any breaks. You get no breaks at all on your taxes. It's not like you pay less, like you're still seeing a big chunk of your income go to the U.S. government. And they've become more aggressive at pursuing expats for taxes worldwide. At least they've kind of set up legal frameworks for really going after people who are not paying what the government believes is the fair share. So yeah, but if you renounce your citizenship, you don't have to pay taxes, but then you're gonna, Ecuadorian passport, not the greatest asset. Our kids have Ecuadorian passports because they were born here, so our kids are, Ecuadorian citizens and American citizens, but we don't have, me and my wife and I, we're still just Americans.
And so is that, in terms of, the taxes and that sort of stuff, is that stuff that you learned as you got down there? Or did you guys have an idea of that heading down there?
I mean, we were broke when we moved down here. We were just like, yeah, maybe we'll stay down there. We'll see when our money runs out. So we weren't really, we were not concerned about, how much are we going to pay in taxes if we ever build a successful business. When we first moved down here, it was just like, how are we going to stay down here? How are we going to survive? So it was, we weren't Wasn't on our radar yet.
And you talked about when you were living in California with the smart meters and all that stuff. And, now here in Denver, you see the EMF towers everywhere. Are you dealing with any of that down there, or are you kind of free from it?
Well, I mean, it depends on where you live. I got cell phone service at our house. So, there's been a big rollout of fiber optic networks in South America, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, which was very strange when everything was locked down, right? Like the whole world locked down. I'm sure you guys remember this. There was a big rollout of new cell tower infrastructure, 5G, all over the world. And here they laid all the fiber optic that will be backbone eventually of the 5G networks. So, yeah, I don't think there's anywhere really. There are places, the more rural you go, you can get out in the middle of nowhere where you're not going to have cell phone service. Where we live, we're relatively close to a small town. Yeah, we're about an hour drive from a small city. So, there is, you get the 4G towers all over, and they've been fiddling with those and upgrading those. So they're rolling out. They're trying to get that 5G everywhere. Kind of taking charge with South America's 5G rollout. China's big. Every country in South America is heavily indebted to either the IMF or China, and most are indebted to both. You got both of those blocks. You get the U.S. military very active in much of South America, and Chinese business interests very active in most of South America. U.S. and Canadian business interests as well, and that's who's rolling out the 5G stuff. But we don't have that in our neighborhood yet, thankfully. But there are areas. I think even in the U.S. too, there are a lot of areas you can go to where it's going to be less EMF. Less cell phone towers. But yeah, it's kind of ubiquitous. And then with Elon Musk's Starlink and stuff, I don't know. I don't really know what's really going on with that. He's got a lot of coverage with the Starlink of telecommunications, radio frequency, and I don't know what frequencies Starlink is on. But that stuff's everywhere, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, and it seemed like you mentioned, it seemed like almost overnight you started to see these, here in the city, they're disguised as new light posts, which is all LED lighting. But, we saw one down a couple blocks from where we live. And then all of a sudden, over the last, 24 months, now they're pretty much, you can't go a block or two in any direction without seeing these new quote unquote light posts. And I'm convinced it has something to do with why I don't sleep as well as I should be.
That's definitely real. There have been so many studies that show, even just with normal cell phone use, massive increase of glucose uptake in the brain in proximity to wireless devices, cell phones. I don't know if you've heard of the Warburg Effect, which is essentially cancer cells are very glucose dependent and use a lot of glucose. And they've done scans of people's brain and activity of glucose uptake in the brain when exposed to radio frequencies from cell phones, and you could see just massive increase in glucose uptake in those parts of the brain that are close, and they're actually being heated as well by the radio frequencies. So it's for real. I'm not. There are some people who are really sensitive to Wi-Fi and stuff like that. I don't notice it, thank God, but I don't know. Some people are just really freaked out by the idea of it as well, and they kind of give themselves psychosomatic symptoms, but there are most definitely people who are legit very, very sensitive to this.
Yeah, I think I fall somewhere in between both of those. Some of it's definitely some psychosomatic. He'll tell you I work myself up a little bit too much sometimes.
I make sure to turn off the Wi-Fi when I go to bed, and if I wake up in the morning and I left it on, I'm like, blew it. I feel like I don't know, shaving days off my life, maybe the longer I leave the Wi-Fi on.
I feel the same way if I fall asleep with the phone in the room. I wake up I'm not fully rested, and it's really refreshing talking to you, someone who's gonna, hey, glucose levels, stuff like that. We have a conversation like this with our family. We're the weirdos, but it's good and reassuring to talk to someone like you. It's like, no, there's these studies that show there's these effects on how you process and stuff, and it's good for our audience to hear these things because I don't think there's enough conversations.
It's important to frame it in a way for normies, right? Like, sometimes we can get so far down there are a lot of things that we probably take for granted that, we talk to our friends and some of our family, have to walk them along 10 steps in a gentle way to get them to the point where you're at on anything, like talking about geopolitics with somebody or talking about, well, everything's so politicized now, but any, health restrictions and stuff like that, it's amazing how much of a gulf there really is between portions of the population, what they understand about these things like, wireless technology, cell phones, 5G, stuff like that. I mean, I don't know. One of the weird things that's happened the last couple of years is that just talking about 5G or, the possible negative health effects, the proven negative health effects of radio frequency, of millimeter waves, of microwave radiation, this topic has become like, oh, that's just like conspiracy, crazy talk, right? Like, oh, if you don't like 5G, you must be one of these crazy people that doesn't want Bill Gates' magic healthy medicine. So it's kind of sad, but yeah, I think these are big issues, man. Like radio frequency and microwave frequencies. These are things that these are the effects of these have been studied. I think a really interesting one to point out is the active denial systems that the U.S. military developed and started advertising around 2003, 2004. How they used them in Iraq, and these are essentially millimeter wave frequency active denial system weapons, which are meant to neutralize and immobilize dissidents and crowds and even standing armies using millimeter waves, the same frequencies that are being used by the 5G networks. Albeit the 5G cells are much smaller than these active denial systems. If you just search ADS, active denial system, Google Images, you can see some of these big old LRAD devices, these big old like acoustic huge drums on the back of these armored vehicles that they use for like crowd control. And that's real, it's not something that's made up. That's something that our government has spent our tax money on to develop. And that same technology is actually in there. The same frequencies are used by these 5G networks, which want to connect everything, all of our devices, right? Our smart toilets, like they want to have smart toilets that'll measure your doo-doo and tell you if you've overeaten your bug rations or like you had, a couple sips of too much cockroach milk. Just it's really crazy, like what this smart city, sustainable development goals grid. It's really crazy when you kind of study this stuff and you realize what it is. And it's just a complete dehumanizing, total surveillance network designed to, it's just like a digital nanny state everywhere. Where like even your freaking toilet's taking pictures of your butthole and stuff and sending your insurance company reports on your fecal microbiome so they can tell you which medicines you need to take. It's like madness.
Yeah, it's wild times. Were you mentioned the stuff that you and your wife decided in 2010. Were you kind of raised like this to be thinking about this stuff or be aware of this stuff? Was there a specific moment in your upbringing or in your childhood that, because I feel like in 2010, I had some conspiracies and stuff that I was looking into, but it seems like you were down the rabbit hole a little bit deeper earlier on. And now with your research and stuff, it seems like it's pretty extensive.
Thinking back, I remember thinking the 9/11 was, I remember like learning about the 9/11 stuff around 2003, diving really deep into that. And then, yeah, I've been researching a lot of this stuff for a long time. I don't know. When I was a little kid, I used to go get all the like cryptozoology books and researched UFOs. I remember reading Whitley Strieber's book. It was like 10 years old. I shouldn't have read this book, but I read Communion. You heard of, who Whitley Strieber is? He's I wouldn't recommend reading his book or anything. This guy is like has a crazy story, but he's a supposed abductee, and he had these wild experiences with. When you actually read his book, it actually doesn't seem like it seems like it's a cross between military experimentation and mind control experimentation and like some demonic, maybe multi-generational abuse that's going on in his family or something like that. But he interpreted it as aliens, right? And I remember researching like the alien abduction phenomenon. Actually, there was this movie, it was about Travis Walton called Fire in the Sky. Have you seen that movie? That movie freaked me out when I was a little kid. It was like, this movie it's about an alien abduction thing that supposedly happened with some loggers, and there were many witnesses to this man supposedly being taken up into a craft. I don't know, it's a crazy story, but this movie was a terrible, horrific like horror movie, and I should never have watched this as a kid. But then that freaked me out, and I just started researching all these weird little things and trying to figure out. I don't know, I was really interested in the strange and the unexplained, and really had a kind of a hunger for like probing the mysteries of life. So that of course led me to like, JFK stuff, and I remember seeing Oliver Stone's film when I was in like 8th grade, I think, and kind of had to read all these books about JFK, and my grandma was also into the JFK stuff, so she sent me some books, and I was really into the strange, the odd, the unexplained. Ever since I was a little youngin'. So, yeah, but the 9/11 stuff was like really, that kind of blew my mind when I was 2003, 2004. All the 9/11 truth stuff started really coming to surface, and I took that and started researching really deep into that stuff.
And so when does the health and wellness and I heard you mention, you at times experimented with the veganism before you went more towards carnivore and that sort of stuff. Had you been an athlete as well, or what was there any particular moment that kind of spurred that?
Yeah, cool question. I grew up and played baseball and soccer, but I kind of got out of that once I got into high school, started getting more into like smoking, just being depressed and playing video games and stuff. So it was like, so I stopped. I actually wish I did continue with sports, but I didn't want to be at school after school was over. So it's kind of like, man, there's no way I'm going to try out for these teams anymore. So I got out of, I stopped playing baseball, stopped playing soccer. Grew up with asthma, off and on allergies, always had kind of little autoimmune type issues, which, asthma, allergies are chronic inflammatory conditions, usually triggered by environmental stuff, but it could be induced through toxic load from, injections, certain childhood injections that are given to us at very specific intervals. And so, I had a lot of little nagging health issues as a kid, but nothing crazy, nothing really out of control. When I was in university, though, when I was like 19 or 20 years old, I got hit by a car. I hit a car. Let's see, I could say I got hit by a car, but it was basically my fault. I was skating down I used to really like bombing hills on a skateboard. And I was bombing this hill, and it was a 4-way stop sign, and I thought I was invincible. I was retarded, but I thought I was really cool and invincible, and I just like bomb hills and like go in front of cars and stuff. And I thought I was invincible because I hadn't gotten hurt up to that point. But this car pulled out from the 4-way stop, and I couldn't turn out in time, and I just whacked it and just nailed the side of it, hit my hip really hard, and just kind of got a pretty decent injury. Nothing was broken, right? But I felt broken for years after that. Actually almost like 8-9 years. I feel like just the last 3 years, maybe 2, probably the last 3 years have I really just stopped noticing chronic pain from that. So it was basically being in pain and being inflamed and feeling like I was crooked when I walked after this stupid accident that led me to trying to figure out ways to manage pain. And so, going to chiropractors constantly and, trying to get adjusted and trying to figure out how to keep my body straight, my back straight, led me to kind of looking into like nutrition and decreasing inflammation in the body and how this can be a way that you can manage pain. And the first thing I came upon was actually like vegan ideas, the idea of, you eat more plant-based diet, the meat's bad, and factory farming is awful, and there's so much toxic load in our diet. Some people convinced me that maybe you can do like more vegan diet, or you just eat less meat. Actually, I met this guy. I actually knew this guy when I was in college, and he was crazy. He's actually in prison now. This dude robbed. This guy. He's in prison. Maybe he might have gotten out because I think he got 15 years he robbed a bank. He robbed 3 banks. He would have gotten away. He wouldn't have, if he hadn't robbed 3 banks. I'm pretty sure he could have robbed 2 banks and have like left and been okay. This guy, he was nuts. This guy tried to get me to rob a bank with him. This was crazy. Like this dude, just thinking back on this story is so wild. He was, he had this plan. And have you ever seen the movie, The Place Beyond the Pines?
No.
It's like Ryan Gosling's. It's actually a pretty good movie. I actually enjoyed that film, partly because this guy that I knew had the same plan to rob a bank as the guy used in this movie, which came out later. So in this film, Ryan Gosling, he's like trying to, he's a motorcycle. He's like a carny. He rides a dirt bike, and he's like driving around in this giant sphere with his motorcycle. And he comes up with this plan to rob a bank, and his buddy's going to drive a U-Haul. He's going to go into the bank with his helmet on. He's going to rob the bank. He's going to take the cash, jump on his motorcycle, get on the dirt bike, drive into the back of the U-Haul, and the cops are going to be looking for a motorcycle, but the U-Haul drives off with the dude with the money in it. This guy actually came to me. He's like, I got this plan. I want to rob a bank. And he like tells me this whole thing. And I'm just like, dude, I'm gonna delete your number from my phone. You're crazy. He ended up doing it. I don't think he had someone drive him in a U-Haul because they caught him on his motorcycle. So anyways, this was the guy that introduced me to veganism, right? Like, pretty telling. Not the best decision maker. So yeah.
Maybe it was a lack of meat that caused them to make those decisions to rob a bank.
B12 deficiency.
Well, now that you say that, they've done these studies. The science says there are a lot of studies about like low cholesterol and how low cholesterol is associated with violent and risk-seeking behavior, right? Because you're starving. So like there's truth to that. That's why you said that. And you know that, but yeah, man, this guy got me into the idea of, maybe you can do actual vegan diet. Because he was like, most vegans that I met were just like obnoxious lesbians who just wanted to piss off their dad. Like I knew this girl when I was in like 8th grade. One of my best friend, her sister was like vegan, but she was just like, you're vegan. You buy fake pizzas from Costco because you think it's edgy and cool. So like this was like the first person I met that wasn't just like a weirdo kook. He was a weirdo kook, but he was at least like kind of interesting, and he was actually really good at skating. And I don't know, I got along with him. He made bad decisions and he did some stupid stuff, and I hope he's all right now. But yeah, you can't be vegan in prison, so that guy got me interested in veganism, and I kind of quickly realized that that's not. I was in more pain and saw far less healing when I kind of tried that out. So I quickly realized that, you're hitting your head up against a wall trying to avoid animal foods. And then also when we moved down here, we were kind of in that phase of thinking, yeah, maybe it can be healthy. We just haven't figured out how yet, and we haven't met anybody who's not crazy that's vegan either. But maybe they're out there. You read articles on the internet and stuff. Like someone's writing some of these articles, maybe, and some of them are kind of convincing. We came down here and we ended up meeting people who were doing living off their own land essentially. Not a single one of them was vegan or vegetarian. Some of them were like kind of vegetarian-ish. Well, we just so quickly realized that if you want to actually produce some of your own food, most of your own food, or all of you absolutely need to use animals, right? Like there's no way you're going to grow enough plant-based protein sources to feed yourself and a possible family. So that was kind of an eye-opener there. Meeting people who were actually doing what we wanted to do, and that's, produce some of your own food, even most of your own food. And yeah, spoiler alert, none of them are vegan, and you can't live off the land as a vegan. You can't just plant Beyond Burger bushes and harvest them and get protein and fat. So yeah, I ended up we actually started our website around like 2014 or so, and we became really interested in like ketogenic diets as a way for maintaining stable blood sugar and reducing inflammation. And I just felt way better on like a more fat-based diet, a more fat-based metabolism. And so we got into the keto stuff around 2014 and ended up finding that, with some of like the gut issues that I had over the years, that like a zero fiber, fully animal-based diet, more carnivorous approach ended up being something that was just amazingly useful for me, my wife as well, for general health, and we're kind of getting past the issues that I was just talking about with just inflamed back and hips and old injuries and stuff. And yeah, it ended up really being something. It wasn't just beneficial for us. Like we've seen, there've been countless people who've been dramatically helped by ketogenic and especially carnivorous animal-based diet for various reasons. I don't think this is something that was necessary before. It seems like everyone used to be able to digest gluten. Like no one was freaking gluten intolerant 100 years ago. It happened, folks. Everybody was eating wheat for thousands of years, and they had no issues with that. But it seems like with modern food production, the mechanized, chemical-based idea of maximizing profit and maximizing efficiency is how it gets sold to farmers. The GMOs, the glyphosate, Roundup ready crops and everything. These seem to be really destroying people's guts. There's, among other things, like environmental toxic load, certain injections that we all take as children, also known to mess with the gut biome and cause damage that in some cases can seem irreparable to our guts. And dietary interventions, especially an animal-based diet, where you're removing a lot of these possible, or like a full carnivore diet, all possible irritants from the diet, the removal of all these irritants, and just focusing on the basics, the foods that we need, the foods that can give us all the nutrients we need to survive and thrive in a very bioavailable, easily digestible form. That's animal foods. By focusing on that, we've seen just huge changes as far as health goes and the general functioning of the body.
Are you still pretty ketogenic these days?
I have a lot. We have milk, so I do a lot of raw milk, which would, not put me in like a ketogenic range. My diet most days looks like raw milk and, cheese or yogurt, just raw dairy that we produce ourselves, and then beef or duck. I mean, we got duck, we got We have a couple hogs now. We're kind of learning a little bit more about that. I like duck meat. I'm not a big fan of chicken meat, although we do have chickens. They're mostly for eggs. So yeah, basically my diet's like dairy and meat right now. Raw dairy and meat.
Do you have any kind of time restriction on that, or do you eat throughout the day?
It depends. Yeah, it depends. There are times when I'll, eat one meal a day, but for the most part, it depends on what if I'm trying to gain weight, I go through periods where, I'm going to put on a few pounds, try to, gain 5 pounds the next few months. If I'm trying to gain weight, then I'm going to be eating more frequently. My hunger tends to stay really low. So, I'm kind of almost got to force myself to eat more if I'm trying to gain weight. But, like today I ate first thing in the morning. I had some coffee and I had some milk. So, do a few tasks and then I had a meal. But yeah, intermittent fasting, it's that's something it's useful, right? Like one meal a day, that'd be great. Especially if you've got, if you're fat, one meal a day is freaking awesome because you're burning body fat that whole time. Like you guys both look really lean, you're lean and athletic. So, for you, might not be the best to go one meal a day. It depends on the context.
So you say you mentioned you get your milk, you have a cow, so you're getting your own milk with the meat and all of that you're eating. Are you sourcing that as well, or do you get that from in town or from, are you bartering or doing stuff like that? How does that go down?
Yeah, we don't have beef cows, although I do have some bulls. I've got one bull right now he's like 2.5 years old. No, he's 2. I think he's about 2. He was born in January of 2001. I don't know. I think I got a bull that's 2, and that one could be butchered for meat. We live in an area that has a 6-month rainy season and a 6-month dry season. And sometimes the dry season wants to go an extra couple months. So we have a limited availability of grass, right? It takes a long time to grow an animal fat enough, right? Now there are areas like an hour or 2 away from us that have way fattier animals. They're better for beef production, like for cows. So yeah, we never butchered one of ours for meat, right? So we keep the females, right? We keep the heifers, we keep the cows for milk, and then the bulls we sell them when they're maybe 6 months or 8 months. As soon as we wean the mom, then we get rid of the calf. Because if you get rid of the calf, with the way our cows work, it's not always like this, but with the way our cows work, if the calf's gone, they just are going to dry up. So I've got 2 bull calves right now that are just kind of right outside on pasture. But if I got rid of them, because I'm not going to keep them, right? I keep the grass for the cows that are going to give me milk. But if I get rid of those bull calves, the cows are going to dry up and they'll stop. So it's a delicate dance. You're trying to figure out. We're not trying to do it for profit at this point. If this was for profit, first of all, I wouldn't be doing it. We're just doing small scale, homestead dairy production just for us, right? But if it was for profit, I'd do different types. I'd do different type of different breed of cattle, and I do it for beef.
Okay.
Not much profit on milk production.
Are you? I have no idea. I've never been on a farm or anything. How much are you milking a cow on a daily basis, a weekly basis? How does that? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you milk every day, right? So I got 3 cows that I milk right now, and just had a calf that was born a week ago, 8 days ago, last Sunday. Got another one that I've been milking for probably 3 or 4 months. And she's about ready to be impregnated again, so I got to bring a bull back over to impregnate her. And then I've got another one that calved maybe a month ago. So there are 3 that are in milk right now. You can milk. We'll give you milk for a good year, one cow. For us, we got to keep the calves around. I guess I don't know. I've heard a lot of people, they'll get rid of the calf and they'll still milk for a long period of time. My cows, for some reason, they just dry up as soon as we get enough. And yeah, so you milk every day, once a day here. There are places where you milk twice a day. like breeds of cow that, you know, if you have a lot of grass, and you've got like a Holstein and you have a lot of flat land, or you're bringing a lot of feed to the animals, so the way they don't have to move too much, you can produce a lot more milk, right? So there are people who milk twice a day, but we don't have any animals that are going to make enough milk to where we need twice a day. It would be nice if we could do that, but I think the area we live in, we're limited just because of the seasonality of the grass and like the availability of grass. We're on really steep terrain here, and it's really rocky, poor soil. So actually what we're trying to do is like build up the soil and build up more. Basically, like when you're producing dairy or meat, it's kind of the same principle. You're growing grass. Like that's what you're farming. You're farming grass and you're turning that into food. Right? So you're trying to produce as much grass as you can on the land that you have available to you. And there are different ways that you can manipulate that. You know, you've got the ruminant animal. The rumen is like this giant microbe machine, right? They eat the grass, they churn those microbes, and they turn it into one of the most amazing fertilizers in the world, their manure. So through tight quarters grazing techniques where you use like an electric fence and you move them. Ideally, you want to move them every day if you want to get like the best impact and effect, right? You want to have them in a paddock, a small paddock where they eat all the grass, eat it all down, and then move to the next paddock, and then that grass grows back, right? And you can increase the amount of grass you produce by getting as much manure in that area as you can, right? So that you increase the herd density, right? You have more cows for a short period of time to really impact the soil, break the ground with their hooves, right? Like the more they walk on it and impact it, they're going to loosen that soil up, which is going to allow nutrients to get into the soil and allow that grass to grow better in the next year. So yeah, essentially what I'm just trying to describe is like you're trying to maximize grass production as much as you can. And that's your moneymaker, right? You're trying to turn grass into food. And if you're going to be making profit on it, which we're not doing that because we're not very good at it yet. You're looking at grass as basically money. That's your money maker right there. And you only want to keep animals on that grass. They're going to make you money, right? So we've got sheep and cows that we run together in like a flock herd, a flurd, if you will, of sheep and cows. They both eat different types of plants and they have different impact on the soil. But we've actually seen it's really cool. We've actually seen a dramatic improvement in the last 2 years in the grass production here on our land. And we rent land in other areas, like we got to rent in other spots too to keep the animals that are not in milk. And we only bring the animals that are in milk to our property where we live so that we can keep them close and don't have to go far to get them. But anyways, yeah, that's my long ass answer to the question of how many cows. We're milking 3 cows right now, and we're at maximum production, and we're at peak rainy season. So it's the best grass right now, like these next few months. Maximum grass production and maximum milk production have coincided, which is really nice and satisfying. It's all downhill from here. So it's going to get dry and we'll have less milk, and maybe actually about 7 or 8 months from now, we'll have 2 more calves. And we got to bring a bull down to get the 3 cows that we got here pregnant. And so there might be a period, it'll suck, but there might be a period later this year where we have no cows to milk when they've all dried up and we're just waiting for new calves. I want to try to avoid that. I want to try to avoid it by getting another I could get one more pregnant cow this year. My wife's going to be pissed, but...
Another cow, Tristan?
She's like, I don't know what to do with all this milk we have right now. You want more?
What's the output from like one milking?
Well, it depends on the animal. Like I said, it's nothing impressive where we live. We don't have the greatest soil. We don't have the greatest grass production. We don't have the most rain. So right now, these 3 animals are giving me I'd ask my wife. I think it's probably 18 liters today. It's 3.75 liters in a gallon. Yeah, almost 6 gallons.
That's a decent amount of milk on a regular.
Yeah, like 5 gallons a day. Yeah, it's really nice. It's a lot of food, you know. It's good milk, good butter. We don't make butter, but you can make butter, you can make yogurt, cheese. So it's cool, man. Like we're able to get a decent amount of the foods that we eat just from right here. And then we got eggs, you know, we got chickens and ducks for eggs, and we can use them for meat as well. We got sheep for meat, but they're not meat sheep. They're more like wool sheep. So yeah, they don't give us very much meat, and we've mostly just been losing the predators the last couple of years. But we're better now. It's been a long time since we've lost any to predators.
The homesteading lifestyle seems like it keeps you pretty busy, and probably more than a 9 to 5, right? It's probably an all-day endeavor, and you're constantly cranking content out. So what does your typical day look like? How you know, if an animal being sick or whatever, how does that throw you for a loop? Is it the same kind of day, or are you doing different chores? And when do you have time to get on the podcast?
Yeah, good question, man. There, you know, all right, let's see. Average day, start with that one. Average day, wake up probably around, these days around probably 7 o'clock. My wife wakes up earlier. I wake up at around 7. If the kids are awake, then we'll do morning prayers together as a family, and then I'll go milk the cows. Sometimes I'll have coffee or like maybe a small meal before, and I go out, milk the cows. My wife and kids take care of the chickens and ducks and make sure they're fed in the morning, and the pigs. And basically, it's like there's a morning chore load with, you know, feeding animals, and there's an evening chore load with feeding animals, and that's pretty much it. I mean, actually, when you look at like the way that people have been homesteading for, you know, hundreds of years, for thousands of years, most people that homestead in the U.S., most people like who, you know, produce a lot of their own food, people who live in the South, they're working normal jobs in town, and they take care of their homestead duties before they go to work or after they get home from work, right? So it's like, it is something that you can manage, right? That you can manage relatively easily once you get to know it. But yeah, so wake up in the morning, milk the cows, and then in between the cows being milked in the morning, I bring the milk to my wife, and she deals with the milk. Like, she'll either make cheese or yogurt, or just put it in the fridge as milk. So then after that, we do our work, right? So we've got either meeting with clients, sometimes it's editing videos, putting out content, answering emails, a lot of it. Talking with clients in various ways. Some of them prefer email. Sometimes it's like I don't know. Sometimes clients want to do Instagram DMs, which is
the worst.
It's the worst, dude, because it's like you got to go to the Instagram DMs. You got like 50 more freaking DMs from like random people and stuff. It's just like, got to look at all of them. So yeah, but we got that. We got our website, do a lot of coaching, talking to clients, trying to kind of build our website up and kind of build our business and further expand on it, which has been, you know, the last few years, definitely the internet's tightened up, you know, with algorithms, and we made the mistake, and I knew this was a mistake years ago, but and I always didn't like the name of our website too, but it was just like, you gotta name it something. Because we have health in the name of our website, Google's not so into it these days, so that kind of affected things. YouTube as well, you know, everybody's getting hit with algorithm changes and stuff. Yeah, it is what it is. I mean, it's nice that we're able to be home with our children. We homeschool our children, so you know, we are able to spend a lot of time with them and be home. But as far as like the boundaries between work and other things, it's always getting blurred, right? When you work from home, you're always you always feel like you should be working. You know, like I'm in my office right now. Anytime I'm in this room, I feel like I need to be doing something like productive. Like you got to be working. I would love to be able to full-time farming type stuff. I don't know. I think it would be really fun to run like a scaled up raw dairy, dairy production operation, or beef cows. I think that'd be really fun. That'd be really cool. But yeah, unfortunately, it's a side project right now. But maybe one day we can get good enough and know what I'm doing and maybe turn some profit from something like that. I'm actually a huge fan of Greg Judy. This guy Greg Judy on YouTube, and he has a great channel. He started out, like, he had a job in town, and he started basically running beef cattle. He would rent and lease land, and he ended up buying the land that he was leasing, improving the land dramatically, and kind of built a nice business around grass-fed, which is organic, grass-fed beef production. So I'm inspired by that. Like, I'm really inspired by people who have been able to effectively scale local food production. To me, it's really fulfilling. I love talking to people. I love helping people, but the constant interfacing with technology is something, I don't know, it just can be jarring. It takes a toll on your eyes using devices all the time. And yeah, but I'm not trying to complain or anything. I love what we do. Awesome. But I think it would be really cool to scale, working with animals, because to me that's so much more fun. I love being outside. I love about that. I like being able to hang out and just watch the cows and hear them eating grass. It's like one of my favorite sounds. It's just the sound of them gently pulling the grass and crunching it in their weird little mouths, stirring it around with their tongue.
I'm right there with you. I love working with people and helping people, but I've said it a lot the last 2 years is I just want to live a life where I can wear overalls every day.
I mean, one of my favorite times of the day is just going out and milking the cows, like it really is. So I was saying earlier, I was like, I'm getting all sentimental now, but like, I don't want to give that up. It's like, it should be so nice to be able to do that all day. Obviously you go milk once or twice a day, but it'd be nice to just, really be able to work outside and do that more consistently, because I love it. It's fun.
So talking about how much you enjoy that, and then, having to come back and talk to clients, is it jolting for you at times? Because you're kind of living this laid back life out of the country, not really dealing with what we're dealing with. And then you have to talk to your clients and they're probably dealing with, the craziness of the matrix that they live in. Is it kind of jarring to you? And like, why are you doing this?
Really? No, not really. I mean, it's like I got to go to town and stuff too. And I'm always talking to people in different parts of the world. So, even though we do live in an area that's real quiet, I've still got to be plugged in, and the last couple of years have been a big demonstration that we do live in a society. No, we live in a freaking crazy, globally connected monoculture these days, and we've seen. Ecuador's changed a lot since we moved here. When we first moved here, nobody had smartphones, Ecuadorians weren't on Facebook when we first moved here. Now, we've seen how much social media, how much smartphones have changed culture and have changed people, changed all of us. So it's, we do live kind of in the middle of nowhere. And I guess maybe it is a little jarring. I don't notice it because I'm just constantly, people send me the craziest shit every day, dude. Like, people just like everything. So, I'm sure you guys get this. Like, a lot of your friends, like, anytime something really crazy happens, they're like, oh man, I wonder what Tristan thinks about this. I'm gonna send him, so people just send me all the craziest stuff constant. So yeah, I'm not really in a bubble. I've got a lot of people feeding me their thoughts all the time, and I enjoy it. I like interfacing with different types of people. It's nice being able to help people, but there are for sure days where it's just like, oh man, I wish I could just turn off all devices for a month, just tune out for a month. I'll go dark for a week or two every once in a while. Had kind of a cold flu or something last week, and I didn't do anything for YouTube, Rockfin, anything like that. That was nice, but. You got to get back on it. You got a business that you're running, and and no matter what, like, even if I go dark on YouTube or something for a little while, I'm still talking to clients and stuff too. So yeah, there's no break. Every day is a work day.
Yeah. And with your clients, your breakdown, are you dealing with maybe say like athletes who are looking at this from a performance perspective? Are you dealing with clients that maybe are dealing with autoimmune issues that are coming to carnivore and keto and that sort of stuff? What's the breakdown like? Is it a little bit of everything?
Yeah, I'd say it's a little bit of everything. I mean, most people are not going to do a carnivorous diet. I'd say it's about 70% people who are dealing with serious health issues, and that's why they come to it. Like, I would have never thought, oh, I just eat just meat. That sounds really cool. You know, it's like I would have never thought, oh yeah, I'm just not going to eat cake, or like I'm not going to eat donuts. Like, why would you do that unless something happens to where you just either feel like crap and you got to get your life together, or you're dealing with, you know, whatever, you know, serious autoimmune condition. I'd say most people that come to me are dealing with health issues, and a lot of the athletes that help as well also are dealing with something. I feel like everybody these days has some sort of everybody's got nagging health issues.
We all have issues. Some of them are mommy, some of them are daddy, some of them are nutrition.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, how'd you guys get into it? Like, what happened? What's your problem?
We're athletes.
We're athletes, yeah.
Because of the way we were raised, kind of questioned everything around us and the authority, and that was kind of the, you know, when you start to realize that the food pyramid that they taught you in kindergarten was bullshit. There's the rabbit hole.
So when you start, I mean, are you guys both? You mentioned wrestling. You guys both wrestlers, or what kind of athletes?
Wrestling, we grew up wrestling and running. Rich went the way of running in collegiate, and I went the way of wrestling and jiu-jitsu. But we both run these days, Rich more so than me, but kind of that holistic Paul Chek type approach of fitness and lifestyle is kind of how we try to abide by.
Trying to be jacked when you're 70, like Paul Chek. How old is that dude now? He's like, that guy is so ripped at like 58 or whatever.
TRT's a hell of a drug.
No. Yeah, I know, right? Some of these guys, Paul Chek, that guy was definitely influential. You know, at a certain point, I remember his book. Remember the little pictures of the
poop
playing basketball.
Yeah, it was like the chart of like them all lined up at the like cop place or whatever. What your poop should look like. I used to hand those books out to clients like they were Bibles.
Yeah, man. And Paul Chek, he's the man. He definitely figured some things out, and you know, got the right hormone balance.
Gassed up.
Yeah, gassed up for sure. Yeah. So all right. So you run and wrestle, and both of you find yourself on like a mostly carnivore diet. Do you implement carbohydrates around intense workouts, or how have you found?
I mean, I feel the best when, you know, I earn those carbs. I'm not going to lie to you. I love carbs. So it's definitely something I have to pay attention to for sure. But I feel these days, because I'm really just I'm a full-time college student. So I'm just trying to maintain and not be a slob. So I feel these days like one meal and then a little bit of a grazing period, where that one meal I'm having majority of protein, a little bit of a healthy carb, and then at some point during the day, maybe a bar or piece of fruit. So not like 100% carnivore, but I'm trying to pay attention to those processed foods that I'm putting in my body. And I know Rich is a little bit different with things.
Yeah, I mean,
running. It seems like runners have a very I mean, I talked like Zach Bitter and some of these like ultra marathon runners, and they got crazy protocols that they're using.
Yeah, I'm an ultra marathoner as well. I've run the Leadville 100 3 times, and I actually did the last 50K I did was kind of interesting. I did a 50K on 200 calories, and it was my second fastest 50K ever. And I like to think I'm fairly competitive. You know, I usually finish.
Calories? What, do you use superstarch or what do you use?
Yeah, it was just you know, glucose. It was
gel.
No, it wasn't gel. It was the either Cliff Bar or goo. They have the little like blocks. They're like almost like Jello or gummy. And I was eating one. So there's like 9 or 10 in a packet, which is 200 calories or 100 calories per packet. And I was eating one block every 25 to 30 minutes. Wow. And just water.
You poop yourself?
No, I usually, if I poop myself, it's usually from what I had the night before. You know, I had a pretty gnarly experience at the San Francisco Marathon one year where I had a pretty delicious braised short rib the night before. And at about 16 miles, luckily I ran into a porta potty, but it would have been disastrous had I not.
Dude, you ultra marathoners are masochists. I can't even relate to wanting to. I remember running the mile in like 8th grade and stuff and just hating those days. I always had an excuse of like, yeah, I can't do it today. I got like, my ankle hurts or whatever, you know. So I was always coming up with an excuse to not run the mile. That's, it's like a high though, huh? Like it's really, from what I've heard, it's and of course I've never experienced it, but from what I've heard, it's kind of a high. Is that true?
Yeah, it can be for sure. I always tell people running 100 miles beats working, you know. So
I don't know about that. Depends on the type of work. Oh man, you know it's. And do you ever do it at elevation? I mean, you mentioned you're in Colorado.
yeah, so the Leadville 100 it starts at 10,000 feet. And pretty much hovers around that 10,000 foot of elevation for the average of 100 miles. It goes, the highest point is 12,600 feet, and the lowest point on the course is 9,200 feet.
Yeah, that's serious.
So, and then last week we had Nick Curry on. He ran 173 miles in 24 hours on a 400-meter track. He ran, it was about 8 minutes and 19 seconds per mile for 24 hours.
What did he do after that? How was his recovery? Like, how did he feel the next day?
So we talked to him last week. It was about a month out from what he did. He said this was the most banged up he's ever been from doing a 24-hour effort, and he had just sort of sparingly returned back to running full time a month later. He said he was on crutches for 2 days afterwards.
He's also a low carb athlete.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was he using, so does he train like low or no carb, and then for events like that, carb up the day before?
Yeah, so he does some nutrient timing for sure, and then he actually, in the process, and this is kind of my philosophy and what I do too, is in the actual event, it's not necessarily like ketogenic or fat adapted. It's actually using carbohydrate as a fuel source. But I feel like I kind of like with Zach Bitter, where you use a small enough amount of carbohydrates that it still kind of keeps you burning fat as fuel. And Nick said that he used just like a fruit, a puree smoothie. Had some issues in the bathroom because of that, and he's kind of been aware of that. And he also, there's a product called Vespa, which is it's like a amino acid, and he uses that. I've never used it, but he says it's really good, and he's had a lot of success with it.
Wow, man. Yeah, it's a wild world. The ultra marathon and the distance running is something that, low carb and carnivore seems to adapt really well to it. But like you said, it's targeted use of carbohydrates in an intelligent manner, timed correctly. And each individual athlete is really going to have to do some experimentation to figure it out. There's not like just one template for when you're going to intake those carbohydrates, which carbohydrates to intake, and how frequently to take them in. It's like, you talk to guys like Zach Bitter, and the protocols that a lot of these guys are doing every single time, they're changing something. Every time it's a little bit different.
Yeah, you are an experiment of one, and that's kind of what's led us to where we are, and having conversations like this is that, we are our own science project, and we've got to figure out what works best for us. And, I think the biggest thing, especially on the endurance side, when you try to encourage athletes to try this, is they're not willing to put in the extended effort to actually get past like the grumpiness or the keto flu or whatever it may be. Like, oh, I felt like shit today. But like, yeah, it was day one. Like, how about we give it fucking 7 days or 30 days? You know what I mean? So it's a tough conversation to have, but I've been doing it and I can remember at times in the past training and stuff where people at work would make fun of me because I would just show up with a steak and I would just eat a steak on my lunch break, and they'd be like, "You're crazy."
How people would make fun of you. Like, I feel like, are you just expressing envy because, you know, like, I don't know. I don't know how people can sit down and eat a freaking turkey sandwich with like one little thin piece of turkey and there's a mayo and stuff like that. It's like, to me, that's not a meal. It's amazing how when you really focus on animal foods, like other stuff just looks like kibble.
Yep. Yeah.
Like a steak for breakfast, man. Like, people freak out. Wait, you have steak for breakfast? Yeah, I'm gonna have a steak for breakfast. Now I'm gonna poop one time that whole day, and it's gonna be like a one wipe wonder. And I'm not gonna have gas all day. I'm not gonna be freaking worrying about like IBS nonsense. It's like, yeah, it's boring sometimes. It may seem to other people. I never get bored of eating steaks. Every single steak, always just as enjoyable. But it's not enjoyable in the way that, like, it's not like a, you know, like a pornographic food of like, you know, this decadent, crazy cake with all these different layers and stuff. It's like a steak is a steak. You know, slow cooked meat. You know, sprinkle some salt on it, and I'm just as happy as that. In fact, way more satiated and feel better than if I'm eating, you know, whatever, donuts or whatever other nonsense people live on. It's just, it's night and day, right? The mental performance and the not feeling those bonks after a meal, right? Like when I grew up, I just got so used to feeling drugged after every meal, right? Like I used to get those, I don't know if you guys, and obviously you don't eat these now, but you guys remember those Danishes from Costco and like those like cinnamon roll things? It's just like icing bombs.
Big Texas.
Oh man, and the blueberry muffins from Costco. It's like I'd eat 2 blueberry muffins, you know, a Danish, and just after the end of the meal, which has basically 0 protein, and is just mostly sugar and the worst types of fats, vegetable oil and stuff. After a meal, I would just feel like I want to take a nap. You know, and I thought that was how you're supposed to feel after a meal. You're just supposed to eat some food and then, you know, whatever, smoke some weed and take a nap and go to first period and, you know, like fall asleep in freaking drafting class. That's how I thought you're supposed to feel. But it's just amazing how much things change as we get older and hopefully slightly less dumb and make better choices as far as health goes. I feel so much better all day from focusing on simple things like fatty animal foods, locally produced animal foods, and you're helping your local community as well, right? Like, you know, you buy it from the local producer, they're going to get the money they earn and they deserve from, you know, producing this food. And then your body's going to function better too. And you're not feeding into, you know, World Economic Forum's proposed, you know, global supply chain model. You're feeding into local farms and you're feeding yourself with the nutrients that your body really needs. And it's, yeah, I love it, man. It's amazing how much better you feel when you actually take care of yourself.
And I will have to thank you. I'm pretty sure you were the first person I heard reference the Eat Wild website. And that has really been a godsend for us. And, you know, we tapped into the couple of the farmers markets here in the city over the summer and have since carried that over. Now they actually are doing delivery through the winter. So we've been able to keep up with getting locally sourced produce and beef and stuff like that. So thanks for that. And I send anyone that ever asked me about whenever I post something about. Last week I posted, or the beginning of this week, I posted some heart and liver burgers, and I got a big response. A lot of people were asking about that. So everyone asked me, I just send them that Eat Wild. I'm like, find the map, find your state. I'm sure there's places you can get locally sourced, you know, beef and stuff.
I love that website. They've done such a great job with that. I don't even know how they monetize it. Maybe it's through ads. I don't know. It's an incredible site. Another really good one for anybody out there, if you're looking for, we haven't really talked about raw milk. We talked a little bit about it, but you know, the benefits of raw dairy. In many states, it's hard to find raw dairy. In a lot of states, it's actually illegal to sell raw dairy. But in a lot of those states, you can buy raw dairy for feeding to your pets. or you could buy it for cosmetic purposes, right? And a lot of you out there, a lot of your viewers love taking milk baths, I'm sure. Decadent viewers out there. But you can actually, this is the workaround, right? Like you can buy raw milk for baths or for feeding to your dog. And there are a lot of states where you can get good raw milk legally as well for human consumption. And realmilk.com is very similar to eatwild.com, realmilk.com. You can find local producers of raw dairy. And that's another thing that I think can be a real big game changer for a lot of people. Focusing more on animal foods. And then a lot of people think that they're allergic to milk, or they think that milk is really bad. And look, a lot of the pasteurized milk, like I don't touch that stuff, but pasteurized cheeses and stuff, it's different. You're adding back cultures. Same with yogurt. You're adding back bacterial cultures that are going to turn it into a very digestible, edible food. But raw milk is an incredible food. It's one of the most amazing foods out there. There actually is a protocol for people with serious gut issues where it's like a raw milk fast, basically. It's like people do like a whole month. I'm not saying you should do this, but people do like a whole month on nothing but raw milk and like fix their gut issues and autoimmune stuff. And raw milk's amazing. We should not be pasteurizing our milk, just like we shouldn't be pasteurizing foods like honey, which is a glucose-based food. It's a carbohydrate, but a very powerful medicinal carbohydrate. In fact, raw honey, a lot of like type 1 diabetics will use it to make blood glucose corrections because it doesn't require significant amounts or usually any insulin because it has these enzymes that actually help to break it down and make it available for us. So yeah, like the pasteurization of milk, the pasteurization of honey, these are criminal offenses as far as I'm concerned with against our food supply and against some of the most nourishing and powerful foods out there. So yeah, highly recommend that people look into raw milk, and realmilk.com is a great resource.
It's funny you talk about the milk fast. We were at a strength and conditioning seminar once, and we were fairly new into the strength and conditioning coaching. It was a CrossFit seminar, and these two dudes behind us were talking, and this guy started talking about this. It's called GOMAD. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but basically you drink a gallon of milk a day. And we were like, what the fuck is this dude talking about?
Pretty much a get rich quick scheme.
But I guess it is a great way to put weight on.
It's a get jacked quick scheme, yeah.
Pretty sure he threw up doing Pram too.
Yeah. Actually, all right, gallon of milk a day, it sounds insane, but if you break it up, right, like a liter of milk is not that much, right? A liter of milk, you drink a liter of water like nothing, right? It's, 3.75 or 7.8 liters, I think the exact translation is, but, if you drink a liter of milk in the morning, liter of milk in the early afternoon, liter of milk in the late afternoon, liter of milk in the evening, getting a couple thousand calories. I think it's like 1,800 or 2,000 calories worth of milk. That's protein, fat, and carbohydrate. For people who are trying to make gains, look, don't go blowing up your toilet and be a retard and just pound a gallon of milk in one setting. But it's not as crazy as it sounds, and it can be an effective way to just get your calories up. Of course, I'm a big proponent of raw milk and unpasteurized milk. I would prefer to do that with raw milk and not pasteurized milk. But yeah, it sounds ridiculous, but it works for making gains. And maybe for, clogging up your toilet if you're doing it wrong.
So, Tristan, we have a couple questions that we ask all our guests. First one is, are you a coffee drinker?
Yeah.
How do you take your coffee, and how do you brew it?
We brew it with, we basically just boil it in a pot and pour it through a filter, old school homesteader style. How do I take it black 98% of the time. Every once in a while, if it's really, really hot and there's some cream next to it, I might pour a little cream into it just to cool it down and get the coffee in if I've got to go. But I'm a fully black coffee proponent. I don't understand how people put sugar in their coffee. In fact, if you put sugar in your coffee, I'm personally offended, and I take that very personally.
Do you have a type of bean that you prefer, light or dark or medium?
Actually, Ecuador has incredible coffee.
Yeah.
I don't like it roasted too much. I'd say like a medium, but I like it bitter. I like it strong, like really strong, brewed very strong. My wife makes my coffee too, so like I'm just like, oh, is there coffee? And if it's not up to snuff, I might complain and be like, it's not strong enough. But yeah, she'd probably have to tell you. Maybe if she listens to this later, she might be like, yeah, that's not even how I make it.
Did she make cream too?
The cream separates with raw milk, so you can pull it from the top. But I'm a cream Nazi. I think that cream should be left in the milk intact. And like, I'm not into skimming the cream out of it. So yeah, it's a sensitive subject with my you want to take all the cream and just eat the cream off the top of everything. And I'm like, what are you doing? Now there's no cream. So I shake it up. I shake it up and mix it up.
Does the type of grass have an impact on the flavor?
Yeah, definitely. There are grasses that will yield a more sweet milk. And if you give sugar cane, you maybe get a little bit of like a sugar cane taste in the milk as well. And if you get too much salt, the salt can mess up, make it taste salty.
And then one other question on that. During the rainy season, do you get any mushrooms growing on the cow manure?
Yeah, there are a lot of that.
Cool.
Especially when it's misty.
Excellent. Do you go down that road at all?
No, not anymore.
Okay.
When I was a youngin, when I was a whippersnapper.
I hear you. Tristan, I know you got into it a little bit with the homesteading and stuff, but do you have daily practices that you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of yourself?
Yeah, I mean, our family, we wake up in the morning, we do morning prayers together. We pray together in the evening as well. To me, like that sets the tone and dials it in.
Excellent.
I like milking the cows every day. Like, I don't know, there's just something about you getting in a deep squat for good 30 minutes to an hour, just squatting, squeezing. I like that.
Kind of just to add on to that, you mentioned the daily prayer, and I know you're Orthodox. Were you raised that way, or is that something you found along the way of all this?
Yeah, I was raised like basically atheist. Grew up, my parents were kind of like, they would say they're agnostic, but they're atheists. You like ask them questions, they're like, man, I don't want to talk about that. Like, why are you bringing that up? So yeah, I was raised essentially atheist. High school, kind of got into psychedelics and Eastern mysticism. Then eventually that led to like more perennialism and kind of got into like Terrence McKenna and stuff in college. Listen to his talks about the mushrooms, and the mushrooms will speak to you. 5 grams in silent darkness. So yeah, I got into the psychedelics and even like Western occultism at one point, and ended up having kind of a conversion experience, becoming more like Protestant. Ended up believing in God. And reading the Bible, and just actually made a lot of sense to me all of a sudden. And then years later, I didn't know where to take that really. And then I started learning about the history of the church and learning about Orthodoxy, and started reading the church fathers, and really enjoyed Father Seraphim Rose's book called Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future. And he wrote another book on nihilism. It's just called Nihilism, and that book was great. And I loved his critique on nihilism. It was basically a book, a critique on liberalism, nihilism, and kind of really spoke to me about the culture that I grew up in. And from there, became fascinated with Orthodoxy, and we ended up becoming Orthodox. I ended up being convinced of it maybe almost 4 years ago, and then we were baptized into the church last year. About a year ago, we were baptized into the church. So, yeah, it's that's something that obviously I would have never expected growing up. I never knew the Orthodox Church existed. I thought you're either Catholic or Protestant.
Are those two books are the ones you would recommend for someone who's spiritual that likes to read that type of stuff and wants to know more about orthodoxy?
Yes. The Nihilism book is fantastic, and Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future is a great book. It's got a really good critique on like Pentecostal, like evangelical stuff, which I think most people can relate to. The evangelical world in the U.S. is really goofy. I got friends who like evangelical and stuff. I'm not saying I'm not trying to hate, but to me, it always felt empty. And I think he does a great job at kind of exploring a lot of the ideas of Eastern mysticism from Orthodox perspective and kind of critiquing Eastern mysticism and stuff. It's a heavy hitting book, The Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future. That one is he was really ahead of his time. Father Seraphim Rose in that book talks about a possible coming UFO deception, and he wrote the book in 1975. I think it was published in like 75 or 6. And he's talking about the possible great deception using technology and involvement of like the UFO phenomenon. I really enjoyed that book, especially because as a kid I was obsessed with like UFOs and stuff. And Jacques Vallée, he actually references Jacques Vallée's book in there as well. Jacques Vallée was like a famous researcher who ended up coming to the conclusion that the UFO phenomenon has a physical as well as like a more metaphysical, spiritual component to it, and a component of perhaps deception, a component that is very subtle and ethereal. That Father Seraphim Rose ends up saying, this is from the Orthodox perspective, this is clearly something that we've seen throughout the ages, and he says it's demonic, which is fascinating because when you look at the UFO abduction phenomenon and how it kind of does dovetail with the MK Ultra, got the Manchurian Candidate poster behind you, right? Like the psycho, psychotronic warfare, electronic warfare, mind control, drugs, hypnosis, light shows, all this stuff. There is a connection with that and the UFO phenomenon. That and also a ritual and a ritual magic aspect to it that you even see with guys like Stephen Greer, who they go and they do seances and they call these lights down and they get a group of people and they call them aliens, they call them ETs, calling them in. So yeah, there's fascinating connections there between mysticism, the occult, mind control cults, perhaps military experimentation, spirituality, the demonic, which I mean, even like Aleister Crowley, his famous image of Lamb, that like alien looking thing with a big old head and stuff. He said he was channeling this entity and it looks just like they're freaking gray aliens. So I don't know, all that stuff, very, very influential to me. And I enjoyed how Father Seraphim Rose kind of handled the subject. So yeah, I think it's a decent introduction. It's kind of like a quick sledgehammer of a book, so I always recommend that one.
Cool, thank you.
Just before we get to our next question, I have to say, you just reminded me, your impersonations are phenomenal. Like I've heard you just did Terrence McKenna. I've heard you do Klaus Schwab. You've got a couple other ones. It's just like when you do the prototypical like vegan California type of person talking. It's just if the homesteading, if it doesn't work out for you, I think you got a future in stand-up comedy too.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate that. I like doing voices and impressions and stuff. I try not to do it too much because it's like humor is an interesting tool. It could be useful, and then it could just be a hiding mechanism, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I used to really like being funny when I was a kid, but I was just using it to kind of hide away, defense mechanism kind of thing.
Yeah,
for sure. So what are you reading right now, listening to, music, audiobooks, anything like that, podcasts?
Oh, man. All right. You know, I'm reading right now, one of the books that I'm reading. I end up reading a lot of books at the same time. I've been slowly going through Dr. Jose Delgado's book, The Physical Control of the Mind. Look at the exact title of that book. That book's crazy. Dr. Jose Delgado, Physical Control of the Mind. This is the famous doctor that actually put a microchip in a bull and remote controlled the bull. And he was funded by the U.S. government. He actually says in this book that you could use, drugs and an electronic manipulation to physically control the mind, and that's what that book's all about. I don't think he's like a great person or anything like that. It's kind of like reading the musings of a deranged lunatic psychopath. So yeah, that's an interesting one. I've kind of gotten halfway through that. I'm also reading, there's another one, Dumitru Staniloae, which he's a Romanian, is he Romanian? I think he's Romanian. Staniloae's book, Orthodox Dogmatic Theology, The Experience of God. It's like the first volume of 7, I think, that he put out. And this is kind of more like deep theology, philosophy, pretty awesome book, really heady, very deep, and I'm slowly making my way through that. Let's see what else. I have books scattered all throughout my office here. I don't know, I've got quite a few books open. I can just show you more of what's on my desk. There's a book, The Aztecs. This is from, let me get his name right, Fray Diego Duran. This is from 1570 that he published this, and it's the history of the Indies of New Spain. So it's an interesting book just on the history of the Aztecs and it's kind of more anthropological. I've got this Rand Corporation document right here, The Internet of Bodies, Opportunities, Risks, and Governance. You kind of guess, but that's kind of an extension of Jose Delgado's Physical Control of the Mind. Basically, how are we going to sell this to everybody and get them to willingly engage in this? And that's just a few of the things I've got open over here. What else? I've got Population in the American Future, the Rockefeller Foundation Population Council report, just from 1969, and that's pretty crazy. They talk about getting people out of rural areas and getting them eating food made in factories rather than animal foods produced locally as a technique. They're talking about it as a technique for reducing the human population into cities and out of rural areas. So, kind of a little mishmash of theology as well as scientific and geopolitical type reading there.
What do you get down with music wise? I know you said you like to listen to the cows chew the grass or just the milk going into the bucket. Do you have any musical being from Southern California?
I mean, I grew up with so many phases,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I was really influenced a lot by. I used to really like indie rock. I mean, I was really influenced by Modest Mouse, like early Modest Mouse back in the day. Like used to like bands like Built to Spill, Modest Mouse. I don't know, like even when I was younger, into like fifth through seventh grade, like pop punk type stuff, like No Effects and all those bands, and I mean, I remember being in high school and really liking. I actually learned a lot about a lot of the 9/11 research I did when I was in high school were because of Immortal Technique.
Yep.
Those Revolutionary Volume 1 and 2, and like some of those tracks are just like all these keywords. You start looking up, you're like, oh wow, crazy. So a lot of that stuff, and then I was into like some more underground hip hop stuff, like Atmosphere and that kind of stuff. What else? Idea and Abilities. I remember I used to really like that stuff. And then just like, standard, Wu-Tang and basic hip hop. Trying to think of like recent. I actually don't know very many bands recently, to be honest. There was this album that I liked from Low Roar. Low Roar had a few good tracks. They were kind of like indie, almost. I don't know how to explain it. Then there was some band I liked their album, and they got kind of popular with the Lumineers. I liked that album.
Yeah.
They had some good tracks on there.
Right on. Thank you. And last but certainly not least, I know you've mentioned 9/11 a couple times. You said your grandma and you got down with JFK stuff. Do you have a favorite conspiracy theory?
Not really. I wish none of them were true. Honestly, it's like, when you're a kid, it's kind of like, oh, wow, this is kind of weird and cool. And you get older, you're just like, yeah, man, yeah. I don't like any of them.
Yeah.
I don't like any of the true ones, but I mean, there are a bunch of goofy ones that are just like, oh man, yeah, you like these people that think they're in like the secret space program and stuff, but I don't know, that stuff's kind of just goofy and probably run by feds.
How about this? Do you have a favorite cryptid?
Yeah, Bigfoot's stories are cool. Like Bigfoot's wild. Like some of these stories from old ladies, like ladies that are like 90 and they're like, I never told anyone this story, but I was 10 years old and I smelled that bugger and he came up behind me and he screamed as loud as he could and it smelled like death and he had red eyes and my mama told me just keep running. It's like some of these stories are just like, I don't think you're making it up. Yeah, Bigfoot for sure. What about you?
Well, we're originally from New Jersey, so we have the Jersey Devil back home. So that one's has always kind of been a point of interest, and it was always as a kid, driving in the woods or something, aunt or uncle or mom and pop would turn the lights off and scare the shit out of you. So that one always kind of, rings home. And then we a while back had Jeff Meldrum on. He's a zoologist and an anthropologist and a professor at University of Idaho, and so he is a firm believer that, Bigfoot or Yeti or Sasquatch is in fact a real thing. And then also I like the missing 411 stuff. So I like to think, and we just had Jay Widener, who lives out in Crestone, which is like this real spiritual area in the San Luis Valley in Colorado. It's the highest alpine valley in the world. And there's all kinds of rumors of, whether they're dwarfs or Bigfoots that live in those mountains and stuff like that, because it is so rugged and isolated. So yeah, I mean, Jersey Devils always hits home, but I'm a big fan of Bigfoot, and being a mountain runner, I'd always like to, wonder what would happen if I got sight of one or one got sight of me.
Yeah, so I mean, a few years back, maybe it was like 3 or 4 years ago, me and my wife, like when the kids were asleep, we would just like throw on some of these Bigfoot podcasts with stories and stuff. I definitely have heard a lot of stories that don't seem like they're made up. And even, I mean, the Patterson footage, the famous Patterson footage, it's like that looks freaking real. I don't know. That's always been very convincing to me, that the Patterson footage, and looks real.
Well, that professor that we talked to, he said that footage is real, is 100% real. And like he comes at it from like he comes at it from a perspective of like, measuring the footprints and tracking, having different, footprints in his collections and the mechanics and stuff, the way the impressions, the way they landed and made the footprints, that it wasn't just someone that like has like a stamp that's making them, like it's coming from a living being or creature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what's wild is that they're in so many different parts of the U.S. Oh, and then there's one in Ecuador too. They call it Wawa Grande, big baby, basically is what that means. And there was like I think it was Swiss or Swedish hiker that got his ass whooped by this thing. brought him into the cave. Like he went into some cave in the middle of Cajas National Park, which is like sparse. Like, it looks like another world. There's lakes up there, and it's just like trout in these rivers, and you could see, I mean, it's, definitely there could be a big old monkey that's just living off of trout up there in those rivers. And this guy says he went into a cave, and it was apparently occupied, and this thing beat the crap out of him, almost killed him. And he famously talked about this story, and he had no reason to make that up and lie about it. And yeah, there are a lot of people who see the thing that they call Wawa Grande, and I think it's like gray. It's got like a gray coat, grayish brown. It's not like white. You would expect in some of the mountainous areas. There's that one, and then there's the one in the Fontana one. I forget what they call it. Down, they used to see it in the Fontana Speedway, and they would just like wander out in people's properties or wander out on the speedway there. Yeah, there are quite a few different regions that have these sightings that are very convincing to me. But it's something that I have not been, in the last 3 years, or was it 2 years? When did the world go just fully retarded?
Almost 2 years ago.
Almost 2 years now.
It's like, who has time to freaking think about any of this anymore? I don't know, just the rollout of everything that's happened the last couple of years. It's been staggering, so I missed it.
Taking the fun out of conspiracy theories.
None of it's fun anymore. It's just all right in front of your face.
It's all political now, too.
I know, right? It's so politicized. I mean, you guys are in Colorado, and I know that's an area things are highly politicized there. So
yeah,
it's everywhere. No matter where you are, you're dealing with it.
Tristan, this was an honor. I had so much fun talking to you today. I know we could go down other wormholes and keep the conversation, but for someone like you who's putting out the fitness and the health stuff and talks on conspiracy and truth, you're right up the Airey Bros alley. Keep doing your thing, and thank you so much for your time today.
It's an honor coming on. I'm hyped that you guys were gracious enough to invite me on. So thank you so much for having me, and I'm totally down to do it again if y'all ever want to chat again. And I'm gonna definitely check out more episodes of your show. Yeah, just keep it up, guys. Keep in touch, and again, thank you so much for having me on. I hope my audio was acceptable with my boomer phone here.
Yeah, it was an honor and a pleasure, Tristan. We really appreciate you. Where would you like us to direct? You want us to send everyone to Primal Edge Health?
Yeah, sure. You guys can find my website, primaledgehealth.com. You can check out. We've got a book, the Carnivore Cookbook, over there. I've got a Rockfin channel. It's Tristan Haggard over on Rockfin. YouTube, I've got the channel Primal Edge Health, and where else? You can also find me on Instagram. Instagram has lifted my shadow ban, and they're being very nice to me now. I've been a good boy on Instagram the last few weeks, so you can find me Primal Edge Health on Instagram. My Twitter got deleted. I do like Twitter, and I got a Twitter handle, but it's like, I don't even know what it is because I had to make a new one because I got booted. Trying to think where else. You just you can send me a courier pigeon to down in the Andes of Ecuador. Send me some cool stuff via courier pigeon if you want. Yeah, my social security number is 023.
Tristan, you're the man. We really appreciate your time today. Thank your wife and your kids for allowing you to spend some time with us and have a conversation with the Airey Bros. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Yeah, Airey Bros. It's been fun. Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Have a good one.